Well, welcome to another episode of Rimshots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. And I tell you, I just keep meeting these kick-ass musicians from the good old United States of America. I got two brand new friends here that I just met 2 minutes ago on the intro, and I've got Joe, I've got Carson from the Retrograde. They're in somewhere, Alabama. And
Yep.
Where is somewhere, Alabama, Joe?
Last I checked, we were by Montgomery,
Okay.
and the
So,
service feels all right. So I think we're still close enough to Montgomery.
okay, well, that's not too bad because you can get into some sketchy stuff down there. It's pretty wild. So you were telling me you guys played in Nashville last night?
Yeah, we played down at the basement. Monday night show. You can pull those off in Nashville, man. It was a lot of people, packed the place out. It's a tinier place, but it's it's like a staple. It's a staple of the Nashville scene. It's legendary. I mean, Metallica played there back in the day, and it was a really good vibe in there, man.
Okay, so I've got a lot of friends that are in the country music scene up here that actually go to Nashville and play, and then there's some other people that are trying to get into it. But for anybody that doesn't know what that town is all about, just give them a little, I guess, two or three, 20 seconds kind of tour.
I mean, from what we saw, we had a lot of meetings in between the show, and a lot of roads, a lot of potholes. So I hit a deer
Uh-oh.
when I was there.
No, remember, for insurance purposes, the deer hit you. You always got to get that right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, once you get downtown, man, there's just so many players, and it just the city bleeds music. You can really feel it when you're walking through there. And it's even a testament to the basement. It's like you walk through the doors and you just feel like an energy, you know?
I'll ask you, Carson, and I'll say this as a player myself, who's a drummer, that I don't find myself getting intimidated or nervous. I mean, I do what I do, and I'm confident what I do. I stay away with what I'm not good at. But if you guys go into a town like Nashville, is there a little bit of nerves or butterflies before you get up and play? Are you worried about who's going to be in the audience? How do you approach it?
Man, I think before every show, I'm a little bit nervous. Not necessarily because of who's going to be there or anything else. It's just always a pre-show jitter. But once I'm behind the kit, it kind of all goes away. And it's been that way for as long as I can remember. But Monday night, just another show. It was a great time, new city for us. And it went as good as we could have hoped.
Well, that's good, fellow drummer, bud. So it's good to meet you.
Likewise.
And one of the things that I find, and people probably can't wrap their heads around this, but you do some of these shows, and to us as musicians, they're important, but they're really another show, another kind of mile on the road. And some people are seeing you guys for the first time going like, that was the most amazing experience. So how do you prepare for the fact that for you guys, it's just another show on the stepping stone, and for the people in the audience, it's really something for them?
I try and treat every show like it's my last in terms of playing. So you give it everything you got. And then for the people that are coming out for the first time, you treat those interactions the same way. Everybody's out there for a reason, whether they're just, walking by, they follow us on Instagram. They're there to see great music and have a good time. So if you can acknowledge that and be a continuation of that experience after the show, hanging out, that's a really special thing to us, at least, to develop relationships with fans and people that just enjoy good music.
That's well said, because I was doing a show a few weeks ago, and we had we did three sets this particular night. We had a couple of bugs going on, monitors weren't working properly and things were happening like that. One of the guys was disappointed, and the club was packed. I said, there's 400 people in this room. There's 4 guys on stage. What do we have to be upset about, right? And that's kind of the attitude that you have to take in this stuff, right?
Of course.
All right, Joe. So tell me, I didn't ask at the beginning. How many members are in the band, and why don't you give them some introductions for the ones that aren't here?
Yes, we're a 3-piece, man. We're a power trio. The only one missing right now is Josiah. He's our bass player. He's the tallest guy in the band, which we're a little jealous of. Because me and Carson are 5'8" and a good pair of shoes. But yeah, man, we've just been rocking with the 3-piece. It's there's something about it. We make a lot of noise for 3 people.
Well, And I mean, as a Canadian, I grew up on a lot of trios. I mean, Rush and Triumph,
Gosh,
and
there you go.
an awful lot of bands like that. I think the joke always up here was it's less people to pay. So you take three guys out, and but there's also an awful lot of air and an awful lot of space to fill up too, right? Do you find that can be a little intimidating because you're the singer, correct?
Yeah.
So you're singing and playing. Do you find sometimes that can be a little nerve wracking, or is it just like riding a bike for you right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because the first time that I sung and played, when I was like 13 or 14, I was playing around town with some local musicians. And one day, we used to have a guy sing for me. And, it was like the Joe Fox group. And, we do covers. And one day we got to the venue and I was like, I didn't really process it. But I was like, oh, I'm singing tonight. We didn't hire a singer.
Yep.
So I remember, man, we sound checked with Don't Let Me Down by the Beatles. And I just, I didn't even think about it. I just started singing. And I remember the sound guy come up to me. He's like, man, he's like, how long you been singing for? And I was like, today, man. And I was like,
15 minutes, yeah.
I was like, I just realized that I'm singing tonight. So, I've been doing that since I was 14. So yeah, it's kind of like riding a bike, and playing with these guys, it's easy, man, because when the rhythm section is that tight and, we kind of live in that space and it doesn't feel like empty space. It always feels like something's happening and, everything's played for a reason. And that's kind of what we shoot for.
Well, and I mean, I can tell by talking to you guys. I don't know how much media you've done, but you guys are doing great on the because I've interviewed veterans that are having hard times, with putting their thoughts together and stumbling on their words. Heck, I do it from time to time. But as a young band, which you guys are, to hear a young band say what you just said is impressive. Because when I was young, my whole thing was, oh, I think we might have lost you. You still there?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
All right.
There we go.
When I was young, I wanted to impress everybody. I wanted to go out, play a ton of, and it was just all about chops and notes and, groove and stuff. And I figured I couldn't play a shuffle till I was 23 years old, for God's sake. Do you guys consciously do that, or is it a play for the song? Like as the song comes up, you do what's required, or do you have a formula when you go in? Because you told me you're writing some tunes in the studio when you were in Nashville as well.
Yeah, I think the thing we normally shoot for is, and I wish I remember who said it, but it's not about the notes you play, it's about the notes you don't play.
Right.
And I think that's gold, man. That's just like, you can do so much with that because, we're all players. We can all, we got chops, and it's knowing when you should play and when you should kind of give the crowd a little bit and, show off what you can do. And I think we do a good job of, having moments in the set where we show off what we can do. Like Josiah's got a little bass solo on one of our slower tunes, and we give Carson a drum solo, and I solo when it's scheduled in the song. And I think that keeps everything nice and smooth, and it keeps us tight, which is, I think, the most important part.
I interviewed a gentleman last week by the name of Steve Conley. He's a guitar player for a metal band called Flotsam and Jetsam. And his line was, there's digital creators and there's musicians. So the digital creators are the people that are doing the endless reels on social media of stick flips. And I mean, I can't even watch them anymore. And
Yeah.
On the one hand, I'm in awe of the talent. But on the other hand, I go, what are you going to do when you play a bar and you're not getting paid, or, your truck breaks down? Like, so the digital creators aren't getting the experiences. You guys are getting the experiences out there. How long is this little run that you're doing? Because you're, hundreds of miles away from the homestead, right?
Yeah, so we're I think end of April is when we start our tour. And we were lucky enough to get on to TKO, our agent Andrew Goodfriend. We actually just met him in Nashville for the first time. And the message we kind of told him was, keep us on the road till we want to come home. So we're gonna be out there paying our dues, and we want to just be living in the van and playing as much as possible.
So it's great to hear young musicians talk like this, because I unfortunately, in this day and age, a lot of young people don't get to do the touring thing, right? It's like they have this impression that you pick up an instrument, you play a show, somebody discovers you. I mean, I guess it's not dissimilar to what I went through. but they don't. They tend to quit very quickly because they don't get those experiences, right? And so things just crumble because it doesn't happen. I mean, how long have you guys been together as a band, and how many shows approximately do you have under your belt?
Man, I think we've been together since 2020. We played our first show right before the COVID shutdowns, which I mean is a horrible time to start a band, you
No
know, because
question.
it's like, yeah, it's like, you know, you want to get out there and play, and all of a sudden everybody's closed down and you can't go outside. So, I mean, from 2020 to probably mid 2021, we really couldn't play out.
Yeah.
Um, and since then it's been, you know, we'll do a couple gigs here, a couple gigs there. And really what we've been doing is just, you know, writing, recording, and rehearsing together so that when it is time to go out on the road, which, you know, we finally got to, you know, we're ready to, you know, burn the house down. So, I mean, we're going to be playing probably, I would assume, a couple hundred shows over the next year and year and a half. So I'm glad that we had that time to, you know, kind of workshop and get our sets, you know, as strong as possible, so that, you know, it only gets better the more you play.
So I'll throw this out to you. So you said you've been focused on the recording and getting the show together. So how have you been doing that? Because obviously everybody, 2020, this is kind of a theme for me was if you're not taking advantage of technology when everything opens back up again, you're going to really be behind the eight ball, right? So how have you guys been doing your recording? Have you been using a traditional studio? Has it been file sharing? Has it been a little bit of each? How do you typically do it?
Yes, it was a little bit of both. So we're lucky enough to have had a home studio at Carson's place that they built. You know, they put up the sound deadening, and they got these awesome, you know, sound deadening curtains. So we had a real good space to, you know, just run Pro Tools and get ideas down. And with Josiah being up in Atlanta, we would just send him a track and be like, "Hey, me and Carson played on this. What do you think? Here's a little melody. It's a riff. You know, work your magic on it. Throw what you want on top." And then he'd, you know, send it back to us. And we kind of operated like that for a while. And obviously, you know, Josiah would come down to Tallahassee, you know, every couple weeks, and we get to shed them together and tighten everything up. But yeah, man, I can't even express how good it was having just access to a home studio. And, you know, it was a tiny room, but it sounded huge, which, you know, we weren't, you know, releasing any of that music, but it sounded good, you know, and when it sounds good, it feels good. And all of a sudden you start writing things better and things start coming along for you.
So was that a purposeful thing that you weren't going to release it, and it was just kind of woodshedding to go through the process, or you had a plan to put another series of songs together? What was the mindset behind that?
Yeah. So, you know, before we signed this record deal, we were planning on just cutting music in there and, you know, just putting it out and, you know, doing some self promotion on it. We had our first single, Dirty Daisy, was actually recorded in that room. And, you know, we ended up re-recording it at Fame. But, you know, if you give that a listen, you can hear, uh, you can hear what I'm talking about with that room, you know, just how tight everything is. Um, but yeah, once we hit that record deal, we started planning ahead. We're like, you know, let's hold off on releasing all this music. Let's get with the producer. Let's get into a nice studio and see what we can cook up there. And, you know, thank God we waited, because we just called up Fame Studios and Muscle Shoals, and we got on the phone with our, you know, now producer, Spencer Coates. And it's just all history from there, man. It was probably the best decision we ever made.
Right on. I have a question regarding that, but I wanted to kind of put it over to Carson here just for a second because I read a
Yeah,
story
man.
today. It was the drummer from Tool was talking about drummers, and he was specifically targeting younger players, and that the younger players have grown up listening to almost perfection. So you're in the studio. There's if you were to listen to old Zeppelin or Deep Purple or even stuff in the '60s, there's little wobbles. There's little human wobbles that basically everything was one take, right? So if you isolate the drums, for example, you're going to hear the mistakes, but that kind of what made the song part of what it was. His thing was click tracks and things in the studio hamper the music. Myself, I don't believe that. I play with a click track myself live. I do a lot of recording for people, and it helps. But as a young player, I'd like to get your 2 cents on that, because he was kind of almost, he wasn't saying ignore the tempo or the timing, but he was more or less saying the younger players kind of had things a little too perfect in their ears now.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think that, one, tempo is important. As a drummer, from a very young age, it's always been, practice with the click and make sure everything's rock solid. But I really think as a drummer, you get so much emotion when you track everything, and it's kind of imperfect. That's what makes a song, to me at least, when you're playing rock and roll, different from automated drums on Pro Tools. You lose a lot of emotion, a lot of depth. If you're feeling something in the moment in the studio and it pushes and pulls, that's where like the music and the next level, at least in my experience, kind of lies. It's not supposed to be perfect. The human heart doesn't beat at 120 BPM. The human heart fluctuates, and I like to think of the drums as an expression and extension of, my humanity and my heart. So all that to say, I try and be as rock solid as possible, but there's certain things that happen, and it's cool to kind of leave it in. But I agree, this generation of drummers are monsters. I don't consider myself a chop monster. I like to practice, but at the end of the day, I love making music, and my favorite records are imperfect.
Yep.
So
That's a great analogy. That's a great analogy. And you know what? There's a great saying that Keith Moon used to say back in the 60s, I'm the best Keith Moon drummer there is out there. Basically meaning he worries about himself, and, everybody else can kind of compete, because the whole thing with music, people view it as a competition, and I get it's business and you're trying to, get up, but the competition factor, I think, is really kind of soured music in some ways, because instead of everybody helping one another, right, they're trying to step over one another, and I think that's hasn't been super helpful for the scene in general.
Yeah, of course.
So my question is this, because up here in Canada, especially where I live, most acts, if they're not taking part in government grants or they're not getting government grants, we have a weird system up here, man. I don't know if it starts with our healthcare system, busts out from there, but basically the grant leads to people who know how to use the grant, that leads to recording, that leads to, and it goes on to, these are the people that have success, and it's a weird sort of thing. So you guys mentioned you went to Fame, you went to Muscle Shoals, you get a producer. How did you fund this project? And I'm not asking you to tell me how much it was, but how did you guys as young people fund this project?
That's a good question. We had the great fortune of meeting this gentleman online, and we talked with his name's Johnny Miller. He's CEO of Cannabis Records, and we talked with him for months on end about this record label that he's launching. And he believed in us from day one, from hearing the videos and the music that we were making in my home studio. And we developed a relationship, and he kind of took a jump with us and funded that project for us. So we didn't come out of pocket for it, to answer your question. And if we did, it would probably have to reverse mortgage the house and sell the cars.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing. I interviewed a gentleman last night who he's a legendary bass player up here in Canada, and he sent me his resume. And one of the acts he was in, he listed himself as band vehicle driver, because back when he played, it was like that was a job that if you didn't make it in music, you could get on tours and whatnot just by having that skill set. So it's really funny how things have changed from then to now, and how the business works.
Of course.
Okay, gentlemen. Sorry, go ahead.
Just to kind of butt in there, we're going to be living in the van and driving everywhere. We do have a band rule. We don't let Carson drive. That's just like our one. That's like our one thing, dude. Because we want to make it. You know what I'm saying? We want to make it from A to B.
Yeah. I understand that every band's got a bad driver. You got to identify them right out of the gate. So I guess for my viewers, and I mean, I can have anywhere from 175 to 200,000 viewers when I post this thing. Where are they going to find out about the Retrograde, your catalog, your tunes, where you're playing? Where do they find out about you guys?
Yeah, so we're we're big on Instagram. That's probably our main way of getting information out is Instagram, and obviously Facebook. And we have a TikTok, but the TikTok's more for just fun.
Yeah.
And then we also have a website. I believe it's the retrogradeofficial.com.
Yeah, it's all the same handle.
That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're the same Instagram, Facebook, everything's the Retrograde Official.
Gentlemen, thanks so much. Very nice to meet you. Just hang. I'm gonna hit stop here, and we're just gonna do a quick little chat off camera. But I want to thank you so much. Best of luck with your shows coming up, and let's stay in touch, man. I want to hear how you guys do.
Yeah, of course, man. And I love that little Ace Frehley thing you got back there.
I've done my part to send Gene and Paul's kids through school. As you can see, I've got all kinds of stuff here. Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, appreciate you having us.
Peace.